Scott Dochterman. Chad Leistikow. Together on one pod, talking odds and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners. Exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. We have reached the final week of the college football season, finally, with the first 12-team playoff, and it's the college football national championship game on Monday. Involves a heavily favored Big Ten team, so my partner here, Scott Dochterman, and I will get into that shortly. Obviously, some pertinent Iowa football news since we last talked, Scott, to discuss regarding its high-profile quarterback. As I said, that's Scott Dochterman. I'm Chad Leistikow. He covers Big Ten football for The Athletic and bigger stuff too. He was in the New York Times, I heard, recently, like on the front. Was it like the front page or something?
Well, it was a sports section. No, I wasn't A1. I mean, it might take something major for that to happen in today's world, but yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I'm just happy to be in the pages of anywhere in the Des Moines Register. Chad Leistikow here. Happy to be with you on this Thursday morning, episode 76 of Legends and Listeners from the Channel Seed Studios, only on Iowa Everywhere. So, Scott, just curious, have you completed your interview for Chicago Bears head coach?
Yeah, I did last night. It was virtual. It was during the Iowa game, basketball. So it went from halftime through about 5 minutes to go. And I told him, that my first game I watched the Bears was in 1980. And it was the Chicago Bears versus the Green Bay Packers. And it was 6-6 going into overtime. So not much has changed. And Chester Markle, the Packers kicker, had his field goal blocked and then caught it and ran it in for a touchdown. And that's been the story of my Bears fandom for 40 plus years now, 45 years. And they agreed.
What did they say? Okay.
Well, they said, we understand. We were there. The Big Haskey family said.
Yeah. We were in our 60s.
Yeah. We were in our 60s 45 years ago.
Yeah.
And they said
Virginia pretty much was, but anyway. Go ahead.
And they said it was good times. And I said, well, that may be for you, but it wasn't for me. And when we left it at that, and I withdrew my name from consideration.
Okay. Well, they've interviewed just about everybody. So I'm glad you are in the mix as well. Scott, let's start with Iowa football news. We'll get into some college football playoff stuff here and some kind of big national news, I guess, that maybe people aren't paying attention to. That's one of the things I like to do here on Legends and Listeners is, you're a former professor, right? So we're kind of be educators here of our listenership. Like to talk about some of the in the weeds things here on Legends and Listeners. But let's start with the big high profile news for Iowa football, which is the Mark Gronowski surgery, believed to be on his right throwing shoulder. Will be out until June, but should be fully recovered by then, Scott, according to head coach Kirk Ferentz. This was an issue they knew about. This is also the issue that allowed this the Gronowski acquisition to linger a little bit. Haven't really gotten to talk to you much since then. So what is kind of your opinion on this situation for the Hawkeyes?
Well, let's start with that this isn't an unusual surgery. That this is one that, you just kind of chalk it up to postseason cleanup. It prevents him from throwing because, spring football is only 2 months away, 2 to 3 months. That's a little bit too quick of a turnaround to try to throw with that. And this is one that he played with. This is one he could have played with, but why play with it? So overall, I look at this as smart, and on his part, smart on Iowa's part. I mean, he is a winner. We went over the statistics last week and what he brings the Hawkeyes and what he's going to be able to do. I think this allows him to have a better version of himself. because it's a shoulder and not a knee, he could still go through a lot of the offense, just not the throwing part of it, which, you'll be able to get to in the summer. And that's not the end of the world to wait till June to throw. Whereas with a knee, if it would have been an ACL, then you can't step and you can't, push off. And so you're very, very limited in practice then. And overall, for him, that was a wise decision, because he goes, if he would have went to the combine in a month and a half, that would have been it for him. I mean, he would have been put on the scrap heap and maybe a priority free agent, maybe not even that. I mean, it's just, it's such a cutthroat business at that level. So it's really smart for him to go. And of course he got paid pretty well by the Hawkeyes. So I think this is but this is the move that you needed to make if you're Iowa. We talked about it before, and this is a smart decision by everybody to take this somewhat cautiously.
Okay, so let's look at it from Iowa's perspective here. This information, and again, the reason this lingered is because Iowa's medical team gave him a closer look. Everybody wanted it that whatever it was, that Sunday night or Monday night, but doctors aren't working like at 9 p.m. So
yeah,
they had to put him through the tests or whatever, and just kind of make sure he was going to be on track before both partners agreed to the deal. That said, if you've got Mark Gronowski and he wants to have this surgery, Scott, and it's like, hey, I can be fully healthy by June. You still gobble him up for the $1.3 million or whatever it was that they paid him. That 7 figures is out there, and I believe that to be true. I also believe he was offered more by other schools and chose to come to Iowa. So I think you should probably feel lucky in that sense that he did choose Iowa. I don't have any issue with it from Iowa's perspective. You add competition to the room and you try to solve the position that has plagued you for so long, 5 years, Scott. And so it's not like Iowa found this out after they got him. So
yeah.
I know there's a lot of panic out there, and I get it with the Cade McNamara stuff, but I don't know. I'm not too worked up about it. The part that it does give me pause, though, is that he just can't work with that timing and with receivers, because Tim Lester has talked so much about how much value there is in the Shanahan system. So I get it, but also I understand from talking to some people at Iowa that know they feel great about this. They aren't too worried about it, and they would do it all over again, given the injury. So I guess, from Iowa's perspective, I still think it was a smart move. What would you say to fans, I guess, that are maybe cautious about Cade McNamara at 2.0 here?
Well, we know how knee-jerk Iowa fans can be. I mean, it's very intense in every single situation, whether it's a loss in the basketball court to, quarterback to Cade McNamara, everything goes from 0 to 1,000 very, very quickly. And I understand that, I understand that with after Cade McNamara, I understand that with the way the quarterback position has been played the last few years, that, you want some stability, you want to feel good about your position, and for the people, this is just like Cade all over again. Well, they're two different people. They're coming from two different places. So they're having two different injuries that require medical treatment. And this one's taking place at Iowa. He's going to be on campus for all rehab, as opposed to before that was, was taken care of at Michigan, and the rehab then was brought to Iowa for Cade. And I know this is hard, but you got to be patient with this. There's no reason to get up in arms January 15th, when the season doesn't start for another, 7.5 months. Let's give this some time. Iowa has to get this right, and it has to get us right in the short term and the long term, because it's been butchered. We've talked about it for a long time, that since 2017, every single quarterback they recruited has transferred out, every single one of them. And you can't compete that way. You're kind of lucky that the division that you were in were made of your peers. None of them were really competing at a really high level, and you could kind of risk averse your way to the Big Ten championship game a couple of times, but you saw the difference between being good and being great. And you want to be in that great conversation. You have the resources for it and you have the ability to do it. Now you got it. Now it's, I think what you do is you trust in your coaches. Kirk has done a good job, and people may be a little bit have Ferentz fatigue, and that's fine, but they've won, and you trust in your OC, who did a really nice job, I thought, last year. And you trust in your quarterback that you have. I mean, and if it doesn't work out, it's not because they didn't try. And I think that would probably be the bigger fear that we had all those other years, that Iowa wouldn't try. Now they're trying. And maybe it works. Maybe they're still 8-4 with some tough losses. But I think this is the right move at the right time.
I mean, 8-4 would be pretty good with next year's schedule.
Well, exactly.
But anyway, so it's interesting to me because I'm always not sure what to bring up on the show, because I don't want to. This is a little bit different forum than what I would put in the paper, for example. But what I had heard, Scott, so let's just throw it out there, and I just want everyone to be clear. This is not 100% confirmed. Okay, what I had heard is, well, I know for sure other schools were pushing for Gronowski, not just Iowa. Okay, that's 100% sure.
Yeah,
100% sure of that. I heard that Miami was one of them, Miami of Florida.
Yes, that was.
And okay, so glad we're on the same page. We haven't discussed this. But just look at so Miami was offering him a lot of money, is what I was told. And he chose Iowa. And look at what happened with Miami next. Then they turned to Carson Beck. They picked up Carson Beck after Iowa got Mark Gronowski. Now, I don't want to say for sure that, because I don't know what Miami's were, I don't have any contacts there, but I don't want to say they struck out on Gronowski and then went hard after Beck. Maybe they're going at them both equally at the same time. But at the same time, it's been reported by who was it that reported it? Was it you guys that Beck was getting about $3 million from Miami?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
might have been north of that.
Yeah. So and he's out for. I mean, he's not going to be throwing this spring. He's got his own surgery. So this is not unusual, is what I'm saying. And Iowa almost got him. I feel like Iowa got him at a discount because he really liked Lester after talking to Tucker Kraft, Green Bay Packers, who vouched for Lester, likes that Iowa runs the NFL system. Check. Naperville, Illinois native. That was a big deal for him to play closer to home. He said 2.5 hours. I would say more like 3 to Iowa.
Depends on how you drive.
Yeah. Depends if there's any cops out on 88.
Yeah.
Got the I-Pass going. Maybe you can make it to 240. Yeah. But I feel like Iowa used every advantage it had to get him at the best price that it could in this situation. I guess I'm just it's not like Iowa just got fleeced here, is all I'm trying to say. Now, I'm not going to say it's 100% going to work out, but I guess I just would say, factually speaking, Iowa did not get fleeced here, and other people wanted him, and it wasn't just Miami, and they had, he had some. Iowa sold him on this, and so anyway, I honestly just think I still feel really good about the transaction, and I feel like there's a lot of positives that come with this too. We discussed this on Hawk Central this week, Scott. I think there's a way better chance now, and who knows, maybe tomorrow it'll change, but that Brendan Sullivan sticks with the team through the spring and sees what happens, and you've got a better chance for him to be your backup next year, which I think is a positive because they have similar skill sets. I think this gives Hank Brown and Jimmy Sullivan more spring reps than they would have had otherwise. Also a positive. There's going to be quite a derby for this number 2 spot, honestly, I think this spring. And don't forget Jackson Stratton either, Scott. So I think there's even before they got Gronowski, I think there was a reason to be somewhat optimistic about the quarterback's room. You've kept the same quarterback's room for the spring, plus added Gronowski in June. And so I feel good about it, I guess. I feel like there's some ancillary positives here that happened because of this. Like you wouldn't have got Gronowski if it wasn't for this injury, really. Like he might have gone to the NFL, right? So you have to look at it big picture wise.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I've heard that's with also people who are connected, especially to Miami. We've got 2 that are very, very connected to Miami. They were very interested. There was going to be an assistant flying to Sioux Falls to meet him. They heard about the injury and part of what their decision-making process was, that they just weren't interested in, and they weren't sure how deep it was, and they weren't interested in it anymore. And so they went with Carson Beck, who had a UCL, an elbow. They went with an elbow over a shoulder. At least that's the way they approached this. And whether or not they would have gotten Mark Gronowski, who knows? The numbers are all over the place on Gronowski. Some are in the neighborhood you reported. Some are in the neighborhood of much higher than that Iowa paid. Now, I don't know, what it is, if it's it's.
To be clear, I wasn't reporting anything.
Oh, okay.
No.
I thought you reported that. Okay.
No.
Well, the 1.3 million or whatever, let's put it this way.
That was a number I'd heard as guaranteed 1.3.
Yeah. So, there's some numbers that are well beyond that. I don't know if that's true. I don't know, some of this could be through June 30th, and then next year when it goes under the House settlement, if it does come to fruition, he could get more too. I don't know, and we'd really none of us will know the specifics, or unless somebody throws the contract in front of us. That said, all of that being said, he has the resume that you want. 49 career wins, 2 national titles, FCS Player of the Year. Cam Ward didn't have that. Before he went to from Incarnate Word to Washington State, then to Miami. Carson Beck was very inconsistent this year. I mean, for Georgia, he had some really good moments. Yeah. He had some really good moments, and he had some moments where you're like, this guy better not even try to go to the NFL. And Miami is always taking risks in the portal, and maybe it works out for him. It certainly did with Cam Ward, but they still ended up in the Pop-Tarts Bowl and lost. So I think when you look at this, I think Iowa's got the better end of this. I do. I really believe that. If there's a couple other quarterbacks that I would say, maybe, Bo Prabula would have been really good. I think but he doesn't have the resume. Miller Moss would have been really good, but I think he's going to a system that fits him better with Jeff Brom. Mark Gronowski is going to a system, if he and Tim Lester can integrate into, kind of morph their ideas with the abilities, that, it's kind of an open, canvas. You can do some things with it. You can make some things happen. And I think that's really something that could be fascinating. And then, as you said, with Brendan Sullivan, I'm interested. I'm glad it sounds like he's going to stay at least through the spring, because he can, produce and elevate and improve through the offense. If that means that he goes through the spring and Hank Brown closes the gap and he wants to take a look around, well, there's no problem with that. I mean, especially if Hank Brown's improving, or Jimmy Sullivan, becomes a real, candidate for, second team anyway. I know that people are hung up on the surgery, and some people feel like they're duped, or, oh, here we go again. It's kind of the Eeyore factor of Iowa fandom. But overall, you got 95% of what you want here. You've got a winning quarterback. You've got a quarterback that, I've kind of been using the placeholder as the best since Beathard, but he might be better than Beathard. Yeah. Certainly his college resume is better than Beathard's. I'll see. We'll wait until he's out against Penn State and he's, looking at those guys before I give him any kind of, pluses. But overall, this is a big time win. You should be celebrating this. This is in the Nebraska. We won the Super Bowl offseason title realm here. You won a quarterback.
Yeah, I get it though. I mean, he signs, and a few days later, a Friday night statement basically from Ferentz and an email that was mistitled "season ticket update,"
right?
Which was kind of funny. Yeah. That they announced this, but and I kind of wish. Well, maybe at some point Mark Gronowski will kind of sit down and maybe they'll make him available and he can talk about it. I doubt they will, but it might be nice to say, hey, it was a pretty minor procedure or whatever it was, and just say, hey, here's my timetable. Here's what I want to do. He's done a few interviews. They've been mostly like why I picked Iowa, that type of thing. And he was supposed to talk to Tyler for us, and then it kind of didn't pan out. That was right when the injury stuff was blowing up, so I get it. But, I also get why Iowa can't be fully transparent about the injury too, but I kind of wish they would have in this situation. Like, hey, it's a minor shoulder surgery. Maybe it's a major one, but I don't think it is. I don't think he would have been able to play through like a major tear. So Even like a labrum issue is like 6 months recovery if it's fully torn. So if it's partial, it's less.
That's kind of what I think it is here. So,
so
partially torn labrum, which is something you could play through. It hurts. Yeah. It's not anything as severe as, say, like what Noah Shannon a couple of years ago when he had to it basically cut in half, and he just strapped it on. And I think it was Jack Campbell who's like, hey, I heard about it all the time from him. Hey, I gave out my shoulder for you, so you can get all these tackles. So no, nothing like that at all. I mean, and I'm not saying. Obviously you should have some concern. I mean, it is a throwing shoulder. You hope he doesn't have a setback. There's no more pain, or, and he's got a high tolerance anyway, because he's a pretty tough kid, but it all works out that way. Plus he is taking a major step in competition. Let's not kid ourselves here. I mean, South Dakota State, as good as it was, and it could be a bowl team for sure in a lot of conferences if it moved up, it's still not playing, you're not playing Oregon, you're not playing Penn State, Indiana, at USC, at Camp Randall, at Jack Trice. I mean, you play one of those games, and we've seen it before with those teams that they'll play balls out, and they're awesome. In that one game, you're not playing them week by week by week by week. So he's got a lot there, but I'm sure he's pretty committed into making this work. But I think right now you just hope that it all works out, that he buys in, and he will. I mean, Iowa certainly has bought in. No matter what the figures are, they're pretty high. So
right,
I think higher than any player that they've ever had. Let's put it that way for any sport.
Right. Yes. And that's the thing. Like we talked about last week on our show, is that starting July 1st, assuming the House settlement goes through, is approved, that Iowa football, it doesn't have to even. I mean, he's going to get supplemental stuff through Swarm and Brad and everything, but and maybe they're just paying him until that too. Yeah, you just don't know. But Iowa at that point will have approximately $14 million to spend on its roster, like university money. And Tyler Barnes and Kirk Ferentz can say, yeah, we're going to give $1 million to our starting quarterback because he's that good. And they should, honestly.
They should.
They should.
No question.
It's that important. And it just chips away a little bit of the other guys. But that if you're hung up on that, you shouldn't be. It's a proper investment, I think, in this case. And he's been durable. He came back from a torn ACL, Scott, and went and won a national championship in 2022. Mm-hmm. And I'm right in saying his first game back was at Kinnick, right? That was his first game after the torn ACL. So it's people that are saying, well, he didn't have a great game there. That was his first game back from a torn ACL. They won a national title. They won another one. He was Walter Payton Award winner the next year. And they lost like everybody this past year, and they still made the FCS quarter or semis. Yeah, with a quarterback with a little bit of a bum shoulder. So he's been durable. He's 55 starts, 49 wins. He's I don't have too many fears about the from the evidence I've seen. I don't have too many fears about it, but I thought it was important to discuss. Thank you for your context on Miami. That's I think that's one of the good dynamics of our show. We kind of piece together our own pieces of info and give our listeners a good picture of what's going on. So speaking of pickups, Sam Phillips, do you want to talk about him a little bit? Well,
yeah, I was just going to add one more thing here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Look, this is the big picture that, I get it. When you are a fan of one team, you have these goggles and you have very narrow vision, and you see things as, oh my God, I can't believe, they're probably listening to us going, I can't believe they paid that much, and everything. But then take them off, look around you, which I kind of get a chance to do now. And I see some mediocre quarterbacks making more than that, making more than the 1.3 million that go from an FCS program to a Division or power conference team. And you're like, wow, okay. But that's the market. It's kind of like get over the sticker shock, kind of like with Kirk Ferentz. And, the only thing, as Bob Bowlesby said way back when, the only thing worse than being in the arms race is being out of the arms race. And the quarterback fits into that. This is the system we're in now. And I know some people say, "Oh, I don't like this. I think they should do this with," and they'll throw weird ideas out like NIL. Well, if you transfer the second time, you shouldn't get any NIL. Well, guess what? You want to go to court? You're going to lose. You're going to lose worse than they did at the Supreme Court level. So I think it's time to shut up and listen and accept for what it is. You can complain about the product on the field, but the product of doing business, you better be on it or you're going to be out of it. And if you're out of it in football, you're dead. You are dead in the water in this day and age. And you got to commend Iowa. You got to commend Beth Getz for stepping up. I listened to your interview. It was very good with her and some of the things she talked about, which was they will pay the cap. And you have to. You want to be a good program. You want to be a competitive program. You pay the cap. End of story. No questions there. How do you get there? Well, that's up to the people making the big money and big decisions, and you have a great conference to help you out. And so anyway, that is my little rant.
No, I'm glad you. I'm really glad you offered that perspective, and I think that's yet another great thing about our show here is that you have a little bit more. I mean, I cover the Hawkeyes, and I still have perspective, but not like you do. You're writing about Penn State and Indiana and Ohio State. You know what I mean? So we really appreciate that as well. And circling to the Beth Getz interview, thank you for plugging that again. Check it out at hawkcentral.com if you missed the Beth Getz pod. It's available on Apple as well. Just scroll through Hawk Central there. But the other thing she said, and that it was, I think, my final question to her, I was like, what's your vision 5 years from now when we're doing this interview at the Rose Bowl? Well, that was kind of a finish. And she's like, we got to basically be in the game, which is what you said financially. We need our brand to be right there so we're competitive. And so she gets it with football, folks. Beth gets it. Mm-hmm. I think I was just listening back to the interview, hearing the feedback from it, like, I feel like Iowa's got the leadership that it needs right now to be viable in football going forward. Obviously, whatever hire she makes is going to be, post-Ferentz is going to be essential. Mm-hmm. But I really was impressed with her answers in terms of paying the players, all that stuff. And I think Gronowski is a great example that Iowa is saying what she said, or doing what they say, Yeah, walking the walk, whatever you said, you know what I mean? So,
right.
Anyway, I guess real quick on Sam Phillips, because is he a number one? Could he be Iowa's number one receiver next year? What do you think?
Yeah, he could be. And this is probably where I am a little more skeptical than I was on Mark Gronowski is, how do we know he's better than Seth Anderson was when he came in, or Caleb Brown from Ohio State, or Jacob Gill, who was completely under the radar and turned out to have a really nice year, or Reese Vanderzee, or Dayton Howard, or Jarrett Bowie, Caden Weegan. So I put him in there as he should be very competitive to be a starter, and because he's taken a step up too, and he's got good numbers, 2,000 plus yards for his career. He'll be a senior, so he really wants to take a step forward. This is a system that will help be beneficial for him. I just look at it as he should be in that conversation to start and or be very instrumental in the passing game. So whether or not I put him as a starter or, the best number one receiver, I'll have to see that. But I think he just adds to the room. He's got a better resume than everybody else. So let's see it go. I want to see the others. I want to see Seth Anderson get healthy. I want to see Reese Vanderzee take a step up from being injured in June and walking in, and day one he makes it, he starts and scores 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the best things that happened last year was that Reese Vanderzee got on the field so much. And, obviously it sucked that he, had the stress fracture and missed a lot of the season. But yeah, I think that experience will be invaluable. They've pretty much got every receiver back. So, good quarterbacks room, I think. And I do think Phillips could be their best receiver next year, but again, we don't know.
Yeah,
we don't know for sure. We got to get our eyes on him, but he's proven, he's got production. He was extremely efficient. Like he was, I think he had 53 catches. I can't, man, I'm doing it off the top of my head, but in like 1,000 snaps, like that's almost a catch every 6 snaps you're on the field. Like he was extremely productive and had no drops last season in Chattanooga. So we'll see. Also extremely effective is GameDay Men's Health. We want to give a shout, a tout, trumpet, our presenting sponsor of Legends and Listeners. GameDay Men's Health, as I say, every week can help you feel like you're in your 20s again. And I was in there on Wednesday, and they've got a lot of signs up right now that really targeting weight loss. I know a lot of people start the new year looking towards that. They can help you with that, testosterone replacement therapy, which is what I'm doing, or anything else that can help you get calibrated, get you back on the field like Iowa with Mark Gronowski, get you back out there at full strength. More energy, more endurance in all areas of your life. Athletically, your mood, all that stuff can improve if you just give GameDay Men's Health a chance. Stop in at the Ankeny location, West Des Moines location, or North Liberty location, and get a private, no obligation, free consultation and see where you're at with your T levels, everything else. Visit them at GameDayMen'sHealth.com or one of those aforementioned locations. Scott, we wanted to transition into the rest of college football. I want to tee it up for you here because I referenced your piece in the New York Times, Mr. Fancy. I have an athletic subscription just to read your work, basically. But I do all the New York Times puzzles too. I love those.
Okay, good.
Big into the connections lately. That's one of my favorites.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, give the folks a sense of your piece on the Big Ten's place right now in college football and what you wrote about.
This is really the Big Ten's world now. And I'm not saying that the SEC won't be back. It will be back, and it will be back with fury next year, and it might win the national title, and it might have 2 teams in the national title game. But what I think the Big Ten has established this year, Chad, and this tournament especially, is that it is on that same wavelength now. It has the ability to compete, and it is competing. And I think some of the things that in the past that prevented it from being able to, it had a lower ceiling maybe than the SEC. And I think, we could all talk about the bag culture of the South in the olden days, pre-NIL. But what now has taken place, when you look at Ohio State, the fans anteed up. They lost to Michigan for the 3rd straight year, which became 4, but for the 3rd straight year, and they paid for their defense. And then they went out and got difference makers on offense and defense with Will Howard at quarterback, with Sean Junkins at running back, Caleb Downs in the backfield. So schools like Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa can be there too. They did that last year by anteing up for their defense. Michigan, which just landed the top quarterback in the country in Bryce Underwood, and he was committed to LSU. Now he's going to Michigan. The money changes the game. And now that you have the House settlement and the ability for all these schools to pay $20 million, this changes the game, because players are going to go. It used to, everybody used to, back in the old days, try to outspend one another on facilities, because that's how you lure players. They thought, oh, wow, we have a bigger locker room. We have a fountain in ours. We have a pool table with the logo on it. We have golden toilets and all these other wonderful things going on. That's not the way it works. It's about money. And can you deliver in the postseason? And can you deliver me to the NFL? And when you're looking at what happened in the playoffs, Chad, Ohio State and Penn State had home games. They were able to win decisively because teams from the South had to come north to compete. And you look at the other aspects, which are that they are in the North, as we cover an Iowa team or cover teams in the Big Ten, just as much importance to those communities as they are in the South. So the South is never going to go away, but the transfer portal, NIL, and the ability to play home games when it matters evens it out so much that the Big Ten now is on its own wavelength. And Notre Dame kind of counts as that too, as an auxiliary member because of the hockey thing. So that's why I think the Big Ten is well positioned to be the SEC's equal from this day forward.
Good stuff there. I noticed the sun. So while we're recording this, the sun is came out in downtown Des Moines. So I'm going to fix the blinds next time you're talking because I know I'm dark right now. But let me just pipe in by saying I think this is the most encouraging aspect of it, of things if you're a Hawkeye fan, because starting July 1st, assuming this goes through, I think you should root for this to go through. Iowa's going to be paying its roster $14 million, or maybe a little more, to the cap, just like the other teams are. And even if the other teams have more, let's say Ohio State has has 20 million in NIL, and Iowa has 4 or something. Who knows? You're still you're not 500% behind anymore, or whatever you were. You can sell the NFL. You can sell a lot of things here, and you can get paid here. Stability, all that stuff. Now, granted, Kirk Ferentz is going to be here forever, but that's the type of, again, if you go back to the Beth Getz interview, that's kind of what she's looking for in the next Iowa coach is somebody that has a lot of those Ferentz qualities, maybe with a different flair or personality, as she said, but knowing how you can win in Iowa. And so anyway, I just think it's overall, I think it's just funny, we'll see. The SEC is not going anywhere, but it is funny to kind of see their under the table advantages of the past, get leveled here, and all of a sudden, and hey, that's not how it's supposed to be. Yeah. And teams again, who knows who is doing what for sure, but Indiana's a great example. Here comes Indiana, with some NIL money, and they're competitive anyway. So. Right. I like it. And I'll be interested to see what happens in basketball too. But good stuff. Anything more you want to add on that? And then while I'm fixing the blinds, you can even start us off into an Ohio State Notre Dame preview if you want.
I'll just say this. So it's funny is listening to Paul Feinbaum, a couple weeks ago, and this was before Penn State lost, but he said, this really changes the paradigm of college football, which has all been about the SEC, because the SEC has been the first among equals when it comes to college football for a long time, and it's deserved that place because it's been the perpetually the champion. But one of the things he said that I thought was really funny is, imagine if it's 2 Big Ten teams and the Big Ten is ruling the world. I'm not sure what we're going to do down here in SEC country, but hang our head. And I think that's pretty funny because it hasn't happened like this for a long, long time. Not since really, dare I say, integration has the Big Ten been in this situation to where it is now it is on that same wavelength as the South. So, you play now in cold temperatures. You build your teams to the schedule and to the environment in which you play. And now other teams have to adapt and find ways. I mean, we saw with Tennessee going to Ohio State. Now, granted, not every team's Ohio State. They're the best team in the country. But you've got to be careful here if you are a Southern team and you have the potential to go north like Tennessee had to. It is a different world, and you can try to act tough. You can try to walk out without your shirts on, but pregame and pretend like the cold doesn't bother you, like Tennessee tried. But when you come up north, it's different. That's why teams are built line of scrimmage wise. And if there's one thing that's come out of this tournament, Chad, that's been easily to recognize for Notre Dame and Ohio State and why they've won and why Penn State won and why Texas won too, for that matter, some of those games, is that line of scrimmage play is the ultimate. Mm-hmm. You can poo-poo it. You can say, I want different. But the way Iowa won is the way that you need to win. Win it up front on both sides of the ball. Now, you need playmakers at quarterback, which is what Riley Leonard is, which is what Will Howard is, not to the degree that maybe we saw last year with some of the other quarterbacks, Michael Penix, for instance. However, you need to, if you can't compete on the line of scrimmage, if you can't run the ball, if you can't stop the run, if you can't get after the quarterback, and you can't pass protect, you're not going to be in this situation. So how you build your teams matter, and that's why I look at it in Iowa and saying they have the right formula. Now they just need to extend it, on offense with personnel and style. And certainly I think that that's what Tim Lester is capable of doing, and competing to reach a postseason at some point, a playoff at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think playoff viability is kind of a good annual goal for Iowa. By the way, I just had to, I couldn't get the blinds. The register, they must just lock the blinds. They don't want you to mess with them or something. So I just flipped around in a different side of the room, and the light looks better, right? Looks a little bit better. Not as dark.
You look great, Chad.
Okay. Thank you. So what do you think happens? Ohio State, Notre Dame. Ohio State favored by 8.5. The lines come down a bit. I'm just so impressed by Ohio State's defense right now, and Notre Dame's so banged up. It's hard for me to imagine a world which Notre Dame wins this game. That said, I'm really impressed with their resiliency. I actually think Riley Leonard is a pretty good comp for Mark Gronowski in terms of how he plays, what he brought to that team. So if you're watching that game as a Hawk fan, I feel like they've got a lot of the same attributes as well. Leonard's not the greatest thrower in the world, and he's not the greatest runner in the world, but he does both pretty darn well and effectively and makes winning plays. So I think Ohio State covers and wins pretty big in this one.
Yeah, I was one of two at The Athletic to project this matchup in our full-scale predictions. So I
Look at you. No wonder you're in the New York Times. Yeah. Jeepers.
So I lucked out. I got lucky in this tournament.
Scotty brackets.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's not go to the other sport. I'll be way off on that one. What's funny is I'm so I was asked for our newsletter to write kind of a synopsis as to why I expected this to happen and then what I expect to happen on Monday night. Notre Dame, think of it as they are Iowa 2021 with a better offense. They are off the charts in plus minus. I mean, they had more. They scored I want to say they were plus 18, and they had 31 turnovers generated, and they scored 134 points off those turnovers going into the Penn State game. I haven't recalibrated all the stats yet. They had scored 100 more points than their opponents when it came to off turnovers. So they generate a lot of turnovers. They have an outstanding secondary. They've ran the ball with effectiveness. Jeremiah Love is a tremendous running back. Riley Leonard does enough as a quarterback. He's a really good runner, a decent passer. I just don't know that that's enough to beat a high-level Ohio State. And so what you do is you project it as if you had a really good Iowa, can a really good Iowa beat Ohio State? Yes, if Ohio State doesn't play well. However, Ohio State is playing very well. Their defense has been outstanding. As you said, Jack Sawyer is salt of the earth, Ohio State to the core. He's from Pickerton High School. He's from there. I talked to him after the Tennessee game, and one of the things he said to me was, I asked him about, how were you able to put the Michigan loss behind you? He goes, you know what? I didn't leave the house for 3 days after that game. He goes, I hate to even admit it because he goes, it makes it sound like they're living rent-free in my head. But that's how much that game matters to us. And then they also had player-only meetings. And then they figured it all out. Ohio State is the most talented team in the country, has the best defense in the country statistically, has the best offensive threat in Jeremiah Smith, and has a two-headed monster running back. The only thing that really could hurt them would be if Will Howard makes mistakes. Part of the problem with Notre Dame is their assets. They had a great tandem at tackle. Riley Mills is out. That really hurts them. So I got Ohio State winning 24-13. I just think that they got too much
scoring.
Yeah. Notre Dame's a fist fighter. They're going to battle. Jeremiah Smith's too much, even though he didn't do much against Texas because they bracketed him. They loaded up, double covered him. They were like, anybody but him can beat us. Mm-hmm. Well, they do have Emeka Ibuka. They do have Carnell Tate. They do have Trayvon Henderson and Quinshon Junkins. And, Will Howard can run the ball too. So, yeah, I just think they have too much.
Yeah, the turf monster got Will Howard there on that one run, but
yeah.
Want to give a shout to the Iowa Wild, also helping us out here on Legends and Listeners. Big weekend slate for the Wild, January 17th. That's Friday. Iowa versus Rockford. Iowa versus Rockford again on the 18th, and again on the 25th. Want to look ahead to that against the Texas Stars. That is what we're touting here on Legends and Listeners, because we are giving away 2 VIP packs that include lower level seating and on ice concert tickets for Dylan Scott. Head to iowaeverywhere.com and hit the contest tab to enter. Purchase of a ticket gets you to the hockey game regardless and into the concert. Hope you guys can to catch the Wild. This Friday's $2 beer night presented by 100.3 The Bus. I believe that's for the first quarter, so you don't get $2 beers the whole night. So you got to hurry. I've done that one before, back when I used to drink. You got to kind of hustle on those first beers. And then Saturday, 2-for-1 Confluence beers until the puck drops. So if you like Confluence,
yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. So lots of stuff going on for the Iowa Wild. Check them out. Check out the contest at iowaeverywhere.com. Aiden, did I miss anything? Anything else you want to plug there?
Nailed it. Crushed it. We're going to announce winners on January 16th on Two Guys and next Friday on Murph and Andy. So keep an eye out for that.
All right. We Scott and I are just a small piece of the Iowa Everywhere family. So yeah, the big dogs get to announce those winners, right, Scott?
Yeah. Exactly.
Real quick, I got to run here pretty soon, maybe like 10, 15 minutes, but you want to talk about this new portal window? Because that's kind of interesting too. I feel like our listeners should be educated about a potential new portal window. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this is that yesterday, I guess we'd say Tuesday, on the at the AFCA convention, all the head coaches unanimously approved a new portal window of January 2nd through January 12th, and so that allows for to move it out of December, and now it will go to the oversight committee and then ultimately to the NCAA Division I Council for approval. I hope this can work. I don't know that it can. And here's why. As the system is currently in place, sure, it would be great for them to do that, but it does, I'll say, waste valuable time for the players who want to leave. And how, and then we've got, basically it's going to be a 3-week tampering window that goes on in December. I mean, if, teams are already out and they're going to the bowl games, I mean, the hope is that they'll stay with your team. And then once your team's eliminated, you move into the portal area. Yeah, there's going to be a ton of tampering there. I think what you got to do is you've got to try to rearrange the whole entire schedule, which I wrote about a few weeks ago. Among that is moving spring football to June, allowing for the portal then to move to January, and then have a second portal. You cannot have you can't have a second. You have to have a second portal window.
There you go. Double negatives.
Yeah, right. You need a second portal window in the spring after spring practice. It's not fair if you don't. I mean, let's look at Brendan Sullivan's situation. He may want to be at Iowa, but what if he gets through and he's like, you know what, I'm playing well. What if somebody else has an injury and, this is your opportunity to go start somewhere else? You're going to see a lot of hasty decisions. I think you need to have that second portal window because players are going to be in competition. The coaches are going to want to decide who's going to be the starter. I mean, let's say that, not this year, but next year, a Jimmy Sullivan versus a Hank Brown situation. And maybe you want to play it out in the spring, whoever's second may want to take a look around. You got to be prepared for that. So I think this is a good move. You need to have this conversation. You need to move it forward, but you got to have it holistically. It can't just be, by itself, or otherwise, then lawsuits emerge, and you don't want any of that. Because what happens if somebody is in it enters the portal late, and or classes start for some schools earlier than they do at, say, Iowa. So
right.
There's a lot of issues going on here that I just don't know that it'll work out.
Yeah. The biggest thing I would like to see, like you said, is like a June or whenever they can start spring football, like even if it's like right after school ends in May, something like that. Yeah. I know that kids deserve a break, et cetera, but make it a training camp type thing and just do a spring football that ends in June. And then you have a month off essentially, and then camp in August. I think that's the best idea. Yeah. The portal, they're still trying to, it's tough. It's tough to know. Kind of like Beth Getz said in my interview, even with, you're going to make mistakes like year one that you're going to learn from in terms of how much you pay at a certain sports, what you pay your rosters, that kind of thing. Same thing applies here. I think they got to figure this out at some point. And you got to give them a little grace with mistakes, but I don't like that solution either, like you said.
Yeah.
We got about 10 minutes left. So do you want to go men's hoops or women's hoops, Scotty?
I think we should do both.
All right.
I really do. I think we should do both. Yeah.
All right. So the men, you want to start with the men?
Let's go with the men.
The men, Hawks, so much momentum, and then they go to USC and just lay yet another first half egg, never lead, lose 99-89 to USC. Had a great offensive night, but story of our lifetime here in the Fran McCaffrey era is where was the defense? So that said, this is still to me looks like an NCAA tournament team. I actually like this team a lot. If they could come out of this LA trip and steal one at UCLA on Friday, the venue as we record this was to be determined, but I was told they were going to play the game amid the wildfires. I still think I like the team. I think Fran needs a little more depth than just Price Sanford right now. He's not getting anything from Ladji Dembele, not getting anything from Seydou Traore. He's trying. But I like the starting five, and I like Price. He needs a little bit more. It's too bad Cooper Koch is hurt. I think he could have been a factor here. Yeah. What are your overarching thoughts here on Iowa basketball? I know it's basically the same thing every year. Great offense, no defense.
Yeah, this is rinse repeat. I mean, it's at least, if nothing else, it's an exciting brand of basketball. It would stink if they were winning or losing 58-50. I mean, if you're going to lose, at least make it entertaining and up tempo and score a lot of points, right? But this is the team that you have, and this is the program that you have, and it's one that every year is among, if not, it's number 2 in the country in scoring right now. It scores, it's prolific, and you get games like what happened against Indiana. It was 85-60, and then it felt like, and then of course they turned around and lost again by 25 points to Illinois. I know that's not going well in Indiana land. And Iowa could play at that pace and compete and win at that pace. Problem is, you got to bargain on your opponent missing open shots, because you're giving them open shots from the perimeter all the time. And if they're missing them and they start to press and then you're running in transition, then you could beat any team in the country. But if they're making them and you're not getting back after your own mistakes, you're going to lose decisively. And it's rinse repeat with this program. It's been this way forever. I mean, 6 out of the last 8 years, I want to say they've led the Big Ten in scoring. And 7 out of the last 8, they've led the Big Ten in scoring, and 6 out of the last 8, they finished second or to last or last in scoring defense. And it's just perpetual back and forth. I think this is a good team. I don't think it's a great team. I think it's a team that's capable of beating most teams on a good night and losing to most teams on a bad night. And that leads you to get to March. Your draw will determine whether or not this is a fun year or another disappointing year. The problem is, Chad, as we're seeing it, the deterioration of the fan base when it comes to Iowa men's basketball. And, even the other night, it was about 2/3 full, according to the attendance. Being there as you were in Iowa's, there wasn't as many Indiana fans as there usually are. Usually there's at least 2,000 probably, and there wasn't anything near that.
It was their best Big Ten crowd.
Yeah. So but it was 10,000. Right. Which is and Iowa won. But going forward, when you have midweek games, how's that going to handle, going forward? I don't know. So I don't know. I guess I think this is, again, probably close to a tournament team. It's going to depend on some of these 50-50 matchups, and they'll be exciting to watch and very frustrating to watch.
Well, after this UCLA game Friday, which is UCLA has lost 4 in a row.
Yeah.
So it's winnable, but it has all the makings of, hey, UCLA got it together. Mm-hmm. That's usually how it goes. But after this, Iowa does get 4 or 5 at home, so they got to make hay there. Minnesota Tuesday, Penn State at home, then they're at Ohio State, then they come back home to face Purdue, and Wisconsin at home. So 4, they got to get going here. Josh Dix is going, Peyton Sanford's going. Owen Freeman had a career high against USC. Yeah. So I like this team. I'm not giving up on this team. I realize it's a completely flawed team. All Fran's teams are to some extent. But I still think this is a team that could get some momentum, could get into the tournament. I'm not giving up on them yet. I think they're pretty – I still think – I enjoy watching them, actually. Let's go to the women quick, Scotty. First 3-game losing streak in since 2018. So it's notable. Notable checkpoint for Jan Jensen, who said after the loss to Indiana on Sunday that she thinks they're a lot closer than everyone else thinks they are. She sees the fight that they've shown. Do you feel like this is a veteran coach who's been around for 30-plus years with Lisa Bluter, been through all the wars, has been through a lot of these types of teams? Or do you think this is a little bit of a naive rookie head coach talking here, Scott?
I think she's right and she's wrong. I know that sounds weird to straddle that line, but I think she's right in that they are close. They've got a good roster. They've got a good team. And she understands how – she's got a finger on the pulse of the team. Now, the question I have is, does she have the answers? The lineup changes. Do the lineups work? Do the players on the floor work together the right way? And I'm not so sure. I mean, I would have had Lucy Olson in there late in the game against Indiana. I just feel like you hitched yourself to her. She's your player. You make it happen with her on the floor. And I think, 3 straight losses, the last 2 are probably a little more concerning to me than the Maryland one. Maryland is really, really good. And they're a better team than Iowa is. And so you kind of concede that point, not saying you concede them when you play them if you're in the Big Ten tournament or something, but you just concede that point that you're not one of the best 4 teams in this Big Ten for sure. What you look at is you say, why did we lose these games and how can we improve quickly? Because it's pretty relentless. And gather yourself for what, to my opinion, is the most important game of the year against Nebraska at home, because you don't want to get to 4 straight losses, because then you start to analyze your team and go, well, our only 2 Big Ten wins are against Purdue and Penn State, and they're not very good. We've got to beat somebody who's in our neighborhood, or we're going to continuously fall. And with all these new faces and a new head coach, there's going to be more and more questions, and then that invites scrutiny, including from parents, which it's there, and other people. So I think they're capable of rebounding, and I think Jan is right that they are fairly close, but you've got to win too. And she has to put the players in the right position to win, and the players that are on the floor have to execute that strategy. If they could beat Nebraska, they show that they're on a right path. If they can't, then it's going to be open season, and you got to be prepared for the criticism that's going to come your way and from all comers.
6 p.m. Tonight on BTN, actual game on actual network if you don't want to stream it. And then they make the West Coast trip, and I'll be out there for that, actually. Oregon on Sunday and Washington next Wednesday. Yeah. Fly out Saturday. Huge stretch here. A chance for the Hawkeyes to kind of regroup. I talked a little bit about this in our Hawk Central show this week. Like, we've covered enough Fran teams to know that almost every one of his teams that makes the NCAA tournament, which this you hope is an NCAA tournament team for Iowa, no guarantee at all, but you hope it is. They've had losing streaks. people just aren't used to this from the Caitlin Clark era. And the Kathleen Doyle era and the Megan Gustafson tail end of that era. It's just, you're just not as accustomed to this. So I like the pieces here. I think McCabe has finally asserted herself as the 2 here. And I think that will actually help them going forward. She stretches the floor quite a bit. They got to get, you're right. Olsen, I didn't mind sending a message, honestly, to the vets because none of them played well the other day. Except for McCabe. McCabe and Stremlo were the 2 best players on Sunday. So I didn't mind sending that message. And you got to get Guyton out there more and more. She's a playmaker. Stremlo is that intangible player that you love to see out there. Maybe she doesn't play 26 minutes every game. Maybe she starts to, but she's out playing a Fulcher right now, honestly. And I don't know what to do at the 5. That's the problem. I think you have to move Stulke there, and I hate to bench O'Grady and slow the development of Hayden, but I think they're best when Stulke's at the 5. If she's not going to shoot the 3, it's a liability out there, and I think she's more confident at the 5. So we got to get Hannah's confidence back, get Lucy back. It's a good stretch of games here, potential to win, but you're right. It's a big game because, if they lose this, then you're starting to wonder, okay, maybe this isn't even an NCAA tournament team. So they got to win this one. They're still 33 in the net, so they're not – the season's not lost, everyone.
Oh, no.
But they got to get it right, and I like the pieces. I like the freshman development that's coming. I mean, Guyton's better than I thought. Stremlo is giving them more than I thought. Mulaney is the one that I feel like really, if she can get hot, that could change everything. And I know she will at some point. It might not be this year, but she's going to be a really good player for this team. So last thought on women's hoops, and then we'll close it out, Scott.
I like, as you said, the thing is I like the individual pieces here, but the chemistry is lacking. I like, Tegan Mulaney, although
Janet's searching. She subs probably way too much, honestly.
Yeah.
But anyway,
she needs to kind of shut some of this down. I think she needs to trim it. One thing I really liked about Stremlo was she had her worst game against Maryland and her best game against Indiana. So, against a good opponent. So I think you've got to take that in mind that, there's going to be waves. There's going to be inconsistencies. I think what you really need are your veterans to play with more consistency and play better. And that includes somebody like, Kylie Purebach, she'll have games where it's like, wow, she's 3 for 3 from 3, and then she's 0 for 9, and you can't have that. Maybe she needs to go back to a role that she had more last year. Taylor McCabe gives you offense, and you need offense right now. And yes. So I think keep her in there. I think right now they need to go to more of a 4-guard look, at least to open the game, to move the ball. I agree with you about Hannah Stulke, probably better currently at the 5. Bring her in and let her play 4. Bring in Addison off the bench, but you're just going to have to generate what do we do the best and go with that, because it's really, you got to streamline it. You've got to be, and I think for them, it's get up and down the court, play smallish, run, and then filter in players to get better. And I think it means tightening up the bench, and it might mean somebody like Mulaney maybe not playing as much, if at all, or, you're just going to have to figure out a way, because this is not going to be a gimme against Nebraska. They are a good team. This is their rivalry game, and it probably will become the rivalry game for Iowa too, because this is the one team you're going to play twice every year.
Yep.
And last year there were some epic games over there. Iowa lost in Minneapolis, winning in epic fashion, with a great comeback and Gabby Marshall's block and all that stuff. And I think, Chad, to end it on this, if Iowa can beat Nebraska and go to the West Coast, I think it has the opportunity to have a bonding session that they need. Get away, they're together, 3 to 4 days on the road.
Get some good feelings. Get good feelings going. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and both of those teams you're capable of losing them or beating them, Oregon and Washington. So therefore, it's more about building some chemistry together, and maybe it all starts to come together at that point. It's I think it's 50-50, Chad. I think it can go either way. They could be a really good team that finishes 13th in the Big Ten, or they could be a really good team and finishes 5th or 6th. But it starts against Nebraska. It is, to me, the crossroads game of the season.
Way to put it, Scott. Appreciate that. And appreciate you listeners out there. For Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow. Legends and Listeners comes at you every Thursday from the Channel Seed Studios and only on Iowa Everywhere.